What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the weekly show where we share some news and answer your questions. I'm Chris Grant, and to my right is my co-host, the sanguinolent Chris Rasick. Now, for those of you who might be new here, our job is to try and make your life a little bit easier as a seller. Maybe you've got questions about retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, or wholesale. We're going to try to help. We'll also answer any questions you've got about Keepa. And then, of course, we're going to share some news, maybe a weird Amazon story or two, and maybe a little bit of good news. So happy Sunday, everybody. Chris, happy Sunday, man. I'm glad to see you.
Yeah, happy Sunday. Good to see you, man. So weird moment yesterday that I want to share with you. We had a wedding to go to yesterday, and I ended up sitting next to and it was a doctor's wedding, right? It was somebody my wife knew, and so I was completely out of place, which is always fun for me. But so there, I ended up sitting next to the only drug rep that was invited to the wedding, right? And,
like pharmaceutical, not like street drug, right?
No, I mean crack and heroin.
Okay.
Yeah, she had a QR code you could just order online. It's pretty cool. No, she does. Yeah, she's a medical pharmaceutical rep. So I ended up sitting next to her, and sounds very good at what she does. You know, I don't know if you know the type, but it's all just everything you say is great. And and she was, she worked it and got to the point where she turned around and asked me what I did. She goes, "What do you do?" And what a tough question that is. I know what after the fact, I know what I should have said now, or what I could have said. But number one, I don't talk to a lot of people, and like a wedding is, doing OA mostly. There's not a lot of social interaction, so I was out of practice to begin with, and that was a tough question. Like, where do I go with that? And it was, especially because you kind of have she's more of a traditional, sales role and stuff, so it's all, you almost have that like flash of doubt in your mind. It's like, well, I'm an Amazon seller, and it's like, or I'm in e-commerce, or, and it's like, we got a podcast. And, I had a really tough time with it. It was kind of funny. It's the first time that I've been posed that question, like formally like that. So
yeah,
and I fumbled it completely.
Well, I honestly, that's surprising. You're typically quick on your feet with words. And now I'll tell you what I've done. And now my wife does not care for this. Okay. And she's told me a few times, she's like, maybe you should switch this up. I'd really like you to, come up with something better. But I end up telling people, oh, I've got a collection of side hustles. And they're like, oh, and I do that for two reasons. Number one, it is kind of difficult to, say all the things. I run a YouTube channel and a blog, and we've done software, and we sell on Amazon, and we've got a podcast and courses. And I mean, how many things do I have to lay out? But then the other reason I do it is I don't like, if I say I sell on Amazon, people are gonna be like, oh, so you drop ship. And I don't want to have that conversation and be like, actually, and so a collection of side hustles just sounds like, oh, well, he does Uber Eats, and maybe he also does DoorDash, and and they're like, okay, well, let's move on to the next person.
Yeah, that is the one benefit. Like if you do say something like that, there's not a lot of follow-up.
So. Yeah, exactly. So, but I do need something better. It does not necessarily play well with the neighbors, thinking I'm, going to deliver their Uber Eats order, their grocery order one day, and it's going to be weird. So,
yeah. And I'll tell you one thing, my running joke about, how weird it is to wear pants with belt loops, that doesn't go over well in public.
Right.
It's much better here. Like, you guys get it. People, this sales rep who puts 2,000 miles a month on her vehicle, visiting all these accounts and managing these relationships, it's kind of lost on her.
Absolutely. I man, we might have just uncovered a niche, a suit that is made maybe of a softer, more giving fabric that holds a crease and looks nice, but also has a drawstring.
Yep.
I'd be all in on that.
Yeah, I tell you what, you talked about it before. 32 Degrees, right? That company.
Yes.
Sweatpant jean, like, they're only half a step away from sweatpants suit.
Exactly. Yeah, they really should do it. So I got an email. I think it was Friday night, and I replied to it, but this email it kind of bothered me. Someone sent an email in and said, "Hey, I am not going to sign up for the OA Challenge Business Growth Grant." And she's like, "And here's the reason why. You're going to end up picking someone who's new, who could use the cash, and it will make for a good story on your podcast. And that's going to be the reason." There's like, I have no chance. And she went on to say, "I would really like you to change it to a random drawing." And I thought I had a better reputation than that. But I understand, we make content, and yes, being able to find a good story now and then is nice. But I was let down a little bit. And I said, that's not going to be the case. I'm going to actually have someone helping me. It's not necessarily going to be the newest person. And while I would love to have whoever gets the $1,000 on the podcast eventually, it's not a requirement. Like, it's not something that you absolutely have to do. Heck, you don't even have to share the results with us. I'm not going to force anything. I very clearly say it is no strings attached. So if that's been holding you back, I want to let you know that it's not necessarily going to be the newest person. I have not read any of the entries yet. I want to make sure that I'm not like accidentally choosing someone ahead of time. And Chris is going to be helping me. So there's going to be a sounding board, a voice of reason as well. And so if that's the reason, or if you're scared because you have to come on the podcast, I want to let you know that's not the case. And so for those of you who don't know or haven't heard about it, we do have the OA Challenge Business Growth Grant, and you've got 2 more days. Well, let's see, the rest of today, Monday and Tuesday, you got 2.5 more days. All right. We're going to close up the application process on April 8th. On Wednesday, April 9th, we're choosing the person who's going to get $1,000. But it's not just $1,000. You're also going to get access to the OA Challenge, which is our flagship sourcing boot camp. You're going to get access to Keepa Academy as well as Keepa SOPs so that you can hit the ground running, because you need to know how to use the data, how to read the data, and a lot of sellers don't. You're going to get a lifetime license to IP Alert. That way you hopefully don't get blindsided by brand complaints. To top that off, I'm going to give you 15 profitable online arbitrage leads just to kickstart your sourcing. All right. They're going to come from me and my team. They're going to be vetted. They're going to help make you money. And again, this is 100% free to apply to. There's no strings. There's no catches. If you want to be on the podcast and talk about it later on down the road, we will welcome you with open arms, but it is not a requirement. We're really just looking for somebody who is hungry and who's going to be a steward of this $1,000 grant and turn it into $1,500 and $3,500 and so on and so forth. All right. But again, application closes April the 8th. We're going to pick the winner this coming Wednesday, live on the Wednesday show. So you've got a couple more days. Go to cleartheshelf.com/grant to get your name in there. Again, that's cleartheshelf.com/grant. Fill out the very short application, and we'll pick the winner on Wednesday.
Man, what a shitty email to get. to get, and what a shitty email to write. Like, that's the, I mean, I see she's the, I think you said it was a she, I don't know, but like, this is the person in the comments of like those stupid reels where they film themselves buying 1,000 hot dogs from the hot dog cart and then going down to the homeless shelter, and like, well, you know, why you got to do it for clickbait? It'd be nicer if you just did it, you know. It's like, yeah, do we really have to demonize? I mean, yeah, it's clickbait, but that's, well, no, it's not really clickbait. I mean, it's content for engagement, but, you know, I mean, if you can have a positive result in the you know, in the meantime. But anyway, we don't need to debate that. But you know what? There's a flaw in that logic, because if you pick someone new, if you deliberately would pick somebody new, you're actually increasing your chances of that $1,000 going to waste. You know, if you think about it, if that was your ulterior motive to this whole thing, you would want to look at somebody in the intermediate range to pre-expert range, because that is a better story. They will take that $1,000, and the chances that they will flip that into multiple thousands in a very short period of time is better content. So
Yes,
Miss Email Karen, you are incorrect, right, in your theory and in what's actually going to happen. So thank you for spitting that internet email venom and ruining Chris's day for no reason.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it definitely didn't ruin my day. I actually, it was good to get that, because I have been surprised at the lack of number of people who've signed up, which and listen, I get it. Okay. Maybe you're newer here. Maybe, you know, maybe people don't know who I am, whatever it is, that's all very possible. And so I get it. Looking at it through a cynical lens, it would be like, oh, well, it's going to be great content to, you know, whatever. But that was not the intention. I promise it was not the intention. I'm really hoping this thing turns out to be something excellent. And would I love to hear some good stories? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to say that I won't, but it's not going to be because of the $1,000. The $1,000 is just going to be a stepping stone. That whoever gets this and turns it into 4, 5, 10,000, whatever it is, they had that dog in them already. So, all right, let's dive into some news. So, retail arbitrage, online arbitrage isn't dead. We just need receipts. Rumors of our death have been greatly exaggerated. You guys might remember that a few weeks back, a post on the Amazon seller forums blew up, claiming that anything purchased from a retail or online store was automatically considered counterfeit. Well, there were Facebook posts from those who take pleasure in watching the world burn. There were Discord meltdowns. The naysayers thinking they were right after over a decade of declaring RA and OA were dead, were out in the streets yet again. And private label supremacists were dancing on the grave that they've dug and covered a multitude of times now. But that post, well, it's been edited, okay? And we shared that when it got edited. The language was walked back, and now we've got further official, unofficial confirmation. So Paul Rafelson over at Seller Basics, he spoke with his direct contacts at Amazon, and Paul and Joy shared an update that clarifies the situation. And Amazon says, and I quote, "Something purchased from another retailer is not categorically counterfeit, and we are not rejecting all invoices from other retailers. We are, however, giving closer scrutiny to supply chains overall to ensure that resellers are bringing reliable selection and to help mitigate the risks of retail theft, mishandled products, expired products, etc. I am going to fill in that etc. Okay, counterfeit, AliExpress, stuff bought that's gray market. Okay, the translation is everyone can take a little bit of a deep breath now. You know, and the reason this matters, the reason I wanted to be top of the show today, is because fear and uncertainty is expensive for your business. All right. It's also expensive for the economy and all the other things. But when sellers panic, they stop sourcing, they sit on inventory, or they liquidate. All right. This update should restore some confidence to those who are worried about retail arbitrage and online arbitrage as a viable business model. Matter of fact, I saw someone just yesterday share that OA is dead again. And then I saw them retweet the post and say, I love sharing this every couple of months because it gets all the people hot and bothered. Again, just people who like to watch the world burn. So, but RA and OA are viable business models as long as you're not doing dumb things like sourcing expired vitamins from your local thrift store. Okay. And honestly, this is kind of a classic case of Amazon's left hand not knowing what the right hand posted on the seller forums. And if you think this is the first time, it's not. And if you think it's the last time, I've got a beachfront property in Arizona to sell you. Okay. But here's what really happened. A moderator, not an executive, not a policy team member, not an Amazon attorney, typed something overly broad and spooked everybody. It's kind of like if a TSA agent at your local airport says, hey, we're banning all carry-ons, and then you canceled your flight without checking the actual policy. Like Amazon did not kill RA, they didn't kill OA. And not to be too self-congratulatory here, but this is something that Chris and I have preached for months and months. I mean, maybe years. Amazon wants a more hygienic supply chain. And we are their supply chain. This is why Section 3s have happened. It's likely why it's more difficult to get ungated. Amazon changes the way that they want to vet things, and that has to go to the people on the front line who may have the lowest amount of training. And we know from a now deleted Discord or Reddit post that it's safer for those people on the front line just to turn people away, to hit the no button, rather than doing their job to try to get it right, because there are big consequences if they get it wrong, and there are if they get it wrong, there are no consequences, essentially. If you send in the right paperwork and they say no, there's no consequences. But if you send in the wrong paperwork and they say yes, then there are big consequences. So their incentives are not aligned. Furthermore, there's evidence that Amazon is more and more interested in knowing that you or a responsible party is taking possession of the actual goods that you're sourcing. Now, I say this not only as having to supply those things for my own Section 3 and helping others go through their Section 3s, but I'm seeing this more required for ungating, needing things like shipping and delivery confirmation to actually get through the ungating process as well. So it's not necessarily about where you bought it or things like that. It's about whether it looks like you boosted it from aisle 6 at Target. And of course, you just don't have a receipt. So after patting ourselves on the back, Chris, I want to dream with you for a moment. Do you think that Amazon will ever or should ever really define clear sourcing standards for retail arbitrage and online arbitrage, or would that backfire in some way?
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. Outside of prohibited methods, I don't think they need to like set the standard for all. I think they just need to be, they are clear with the prohibited items, I think, but this seems like, number one, yeah, like a big sigh of relief. Like not that anybody's going to change. I don't think I'm going to see less arbitrage is dead content anytime soon, but as this kind of gets out and people read this message and eventually we get the viewership for the podcast episode with Paul, as soon as that gets the numbers that it deserves, 42-minute mark, Paul says Amazon loves arbitrage sellers. You can look it up. But we just know that it's all Dunning-Kruger from here on. I mean it's this is exactly what we've been saying. Because it was logical. It's not. We don't have any inside information. It was just we kind of understand the landscape. And it's like, okay, it's the system that we try to do. It's the system that creates the comments of us being Amazon apologists. It's simply sitting there going, okay, this policy is in place. Why would they try to do it? What would they be trying to avoid in doing it? And we kind of step into their shoes and kind of reason it out from there. And turns out we were right this time. This is, but don't you see, like, even in between the lines here, don't you see just how rough it is, just how big Amazon is, and just how fast everything is. Like let's take expired products. You know who is handling all these products? Amazon, right? But we know that there are ridiculous standards put on the fulfillment, the actual packing and shipping part of this, fill in your go to the bathroom break, or lack of working at Amazon, slide your joke in there, so wouldn't Amazon have a better process to assess the expiration dates that are running right across the front of your face, like over and over again? Like, wouldn't that make more sense? But that's a lot to ask, because you get so big and, details like that are going to be lost.
Honestly, I don't know why expiration dates are not a QR code or something that could be scanned by a machine, just like an FNSKU is. Because I mean, in some of those warehouses, it's robots going to get the inventory for then a human to pack it up into a box. And those robots are very likely scanning FNSKU labels. Like that's probably because I don't think that OCR for the actual product is there yet. I'm sure it will be eventually. So why haven't they turned those into, hey, well, put your FNSKU here, but you know what? On the FNSKU label needs to be a 2D barcode with the expiration information in there as well for the machines, and then put the number, put the date on there for the consumer. That seems like it would handle a lot of stuff. And then the other thing is we got to remember, like, people handling the goods. Amazon years ago basically had to roll back like their drug testing standards, and they're like, oh, it's because the times are changing. No, it's because you need more employees, and there were not enough who were passing the test. I mean, depending on what your version of passing the test is, but so you got to think, like, someone at a warehouse who is just taking like 3 gummies to get through their shift is the one who's got to look at your products and make sure it's good to go. Why did things get lost? And I mean, if you can't remember where you parked your car, how are you gonna know when something slides under a table or if you unpacked that box?
Yeah. Do you remember that article that said, I think it was in Phoenix, and it actually described how Amazon was only a few years away from completely exhausting the existing workforce in the Phoenix and surrounding areas because of employee turnover. They had hired everyone, and in a few years there would be no one left to hire that hadn't, didn't work there or had been fired at some point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. All right, and guys, I want to make sure that you guys know we got a couple more pieces here, but if you've got questions, drop them in the chat. We will get to them, I promise. Definitely want to take your guys' questions today. This next piece, it's just a reminder. We talked about this on Wednesday, but I wanted to bring it up one last time. I dropped it in my weekly email, but no matter how many times it gets brought up, somebody seems to forget. But multiple season is coming to an end. Amazon gave us the reminder the other day. No multiple inventory allowed in FBA warehouses between April 15th and October 15th. So if you're gonna, well, it's too late to get them into Amazon warehouses now anyway. But if you're gonna sell some stuff for Easter or anything like that, you're gonna have to merchant fulfill it. Anything chocolate, anything gummies, a lot of waxy stuff, anything that will turn into a goo or a goop at 155 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, you got to pull it or you got to dispose of it for a fee starting on May 1st. All right. So they give you a little bit of a grace period there. Like if it's already at the warehouse, you're not allowed to send anything else in, but you don't have to destroy it until May 1st. So if you need to liquidate or whatever you need to do. So, and this isn't new. This happens every single year, but I know that people always miss the memo. So I wanted to give everybody just one more reminder.
Yeah. And you know what? It's worth mentioning this time of year. I don't know how to put this, but but like they're going to come out with if they haven't already, the multiples list, and you can actually pull all of the ASINs that they have considered to be meltable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not real good at it,
No.
And there are going to be things that aren't listed as meltable and that Amazon will allow in their warehouses. And like I've taken advantage of that, around this time of year early on. But, let's keep in mind some of the things where if you get like a chocolate dipped something that just happens to miss being classified as a meltable, please don't send it in July. Like you're just, there's kind of a bit of like passive customer service that we have to employ with these things, and or if you want to call it something else, common sense. Because there is, you can get in trouble with the voice of the customer. We've heard, at least anecdotally, that certain things, they do look at that, and it does tie into any bigger issues that you may run into or try to get resolved. So yeah, just be a good seller, for your customers, and just use some logic.
I took a little bit of a chance last summer and sold some things that I shouldn't have, and I completely regretted it. Fast movers, I did merchant fulfill them. I didn't send them into Amazon, but should have never done it. And of course, got so many complaints.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, don't do it. It's not worth it, no matter how profitable it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This next piece is, honestly, this is really more for me than it is really important for Amazon sellers, but I found it really, really interesting. Chris, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think you and I have both sort of maybe looked down our noses just a little bit at buy now, pay later. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah. As a whole, it's yes. A nice vehicle itself, but we worry about the long-term ramifications.
Yes. Well, it turns out that it's not just broke college kids using Klarna to buy Nikes. Apparently, wealthy shoppers are buying now, paying later through places like Neiman Marcus, and even for those $20 strawberries at Erewhon out in Beverly Hills. And here's some stats that I read that surprised me. 38% of US consumers used buy now, pay later in late 2024, which we've talked about. That was up from just 24% a year prior. So 14% growth in 1 year. 13.5% of high income buy now, pay later users use it out of necessity. Even rich people hit some tough patches. But 61% of high income users who pay off their cards every month are using buy now, pay later as a tactical decision, not necessarily a crutch. So, new data from payments shows that buy now, pay later is not just for the shopper scraping by. Over 61% of Americans making $100,000 or more are using buy now, pay later, and not out of financial desperation. They're sort of using it like financial jujitsu. So instead of maxing out on American Express, apparently high income shoppers are using buy now, pay later to spread out payments, protect credit scores, maximize card rewards while not having to wait to buy those $2,000 designer boots. I found this really, really interesting. I need to do a little bit of a deep dive into like how wealthier consumers are using that. Like I don't necessarily care how the people making 100,000 to 250,000 are using it. But if there are people who are making like 500,000 a year and more, and they're using it as some strategy, I really want to figure that out. Like, because I mean, obviously they're probably smarter than me, like if Warren Buffett were like, dude, I Klarna everything. And here's why, I want to listen.
Like Coca-Cola on four equal installments. That'd be great.
Exactly.
Yeah, there is some. God, is there? I want to talk to the person that completely nerded out on this and was like, you know what? This is a 0% loan, and I earn X% on my investments. So, like I want to meet the person that ran those calculations and was like, if we buy this Hermes, like, and we can actually earn, like you'd have to weigh it against, like if it's an Amex, you're probably missing out on credit card points. So there's like there's somebody out there with like actuary tables and
Oh yeah.
like
Yeah,
just
it's probably
like spreadsheets and stuff. That's great.
It's probably hidden somewhere deep in a Reddit thread. I'll like probably in like what is that subreddit called? All the Fat Fire, financial independence, retire early. I'll bet you somebody in there has probably figured it all out. And there could be some arbitrage opportunities. Yeah, my wife went out with her girlfriends yesterday, and they went, got some lunch and some cocktails, and then they decided to walk around one of the really nice malls here in Orlando. And they've got a store there that sells not Hermes, Birkin bags. I don't know is that an Hermes? I don't know, but these bags start at like 20 grand. Which to me is insane. Like I don't want to walk around with a Honda Civic, but I understand they're awesome. But like, could you Klarna one of those, and then they always sell for more, And so, is there an arbitrage opportunity? But I don't know. I'm gonna have to dive deeper on this now as well.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I do like it. I mean, I remember back in the day, it's not as popular now, but layaway, like, we used to have to use layaway when I was a kid, but this is like layaway, but you get the stuff right away. It's like, it's like super, super layaway, so it's, yeah, I mean, I know the purpose it serves, but what we worry about is the consumer, I mean, the average consumer. Unfortunately, I have have somebody in my family, and that's decided to put like groceries on buy now, pay later, and it's like, and consequently hit me up for money. Like, go figure. But it's like, I can't imagine paying the third of 4 installments on food that you've eaten and digested a month ago. Like, I understand the relief, and sometimes if that was your only option, besides the next option being a payday loan, all right, well, maybe there's some merit to it. I get it. But it's dangerous. That's there's a lot of pitfalls to it. If
Yes.
used by somebody who is lacking in financial literacy, put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's my big worry. All right. Last thing for the day, and we'll hop into your guys' questions. Again, drop your questions if you have some. We'll get to them here. But every Sunday we've been talking about a business law, a rule, or a razor that you can use in your life. And I have been going down a rabbit hole. And honestly, I've been wanting to find some that are lesser known, and I think that I did just that today. Today we're going to talk about Ashby's Law of Requisite Variety, which is a mouthful. But that is it comes from W. Ross Ashby. He was a pioneer in cybernetics. All right. I would imagine he's going to be, he will be honored and revered by our future robot overlords. I'm sure of it. But he argued that the complexity of your system must match the complexity of the environment it operates in. So, in plain English, if call Amazon a jungle, well, you can't just show up with a pocket knife. All right. You need the right toolkit. And I would argue, in terms of selling on Amazon, that starts with the toolkit that's in between your ears. For those of you in Ann Arbor, that's a brain. Now, we all know Amazon's not a static selling platform. Okay. It's this amalgamation of algorithm updates, fee changes, shifting buyer behavior, and even the occasional supply chain drama, courtesy of Chris's favorite gold chain wearing tough guy from Jersey. Ashby's Law says that you either match that chaos or you get wrecked by it. So, and here's what variety looks like in Amazon's environment. There may be algorithm shifts. That could be the buy box algorithm. It could be just the way that the algorithm for search works. That happened with the A10 update. Not necessarily the biggest deal for arbitrage sellers, a much bigger deal for private label sellers. But those things can shift all the time and without notice, of course. Then, of course, there are FBA fee increases, and those can feel like death by 1,000 cuts, but they can also be ways for Amazon to try to push us into things that they want from us. There can be changes in gating, receipt and invoice requirements, which we have seen. And of course, there can be consumer trend changes. You guys remember a fidget spinner? Well, not anymore, The question isn't really if something will change, it's how often and how hard that change is going to hit you. So how do you prepare for that? Well, in terms of Amazon, especially with arbitrage, one, sourcing variety. You don't want to be a one-hit wonder, okay? So if 90% of your inventory maybe comes from one particular brand, you're not really running a business. You're kind of playing roulette, all right? So what should you do instead? Well, learn to source from multiple retailers, multiple sites, multiple brands. Learn how to source in multiple different ways. In our Q2 group, we run a Q2 lead and mastermind group. I know that there will be 300 or more different sources over the next 90 days. You need to make sure to track policy changes so that you don't have to be completely reactive or on your heels all the time. pretty easy to do if you show up here every Sunday and Wednesday. I would test a new source every month, or a new way of sourcing every month. Kind of actually build some sourcing muscle confusion, if you will, which should make you a stronger seller. You should practice a portfolio approach. So maybe you're only selling one particular brand again. Maybe you're only selling in one particular niche or one category. But what happens? I mean, gatings happen. We've seen it with Nike. We've seen a partial gating on Adidas. I won't go and call it the end of the world like other Adidas sellers have, but that could happen to a particular category. Maybe Amazon one day says, hey, you know what? The baby category is a little too dangerous for us to allow just anybody into. So what should you do instead? Well, again, take a Vanguard approach. Maybe 40% evergreen products, maybe 30% seasonal products. Maybe you go after some 20% trending products. Go see what's hot on TikTok and look for those. See if you can arbitrage those. And then maybe you take 10% on moonshots, things that maybe you aren't sure about, or things that look like they have a massive asymmetric upside and a very small downside if maybe they don't sell or you need to bring that price down. You kind of need all of these things as an Amazon seller. And then I would remind you, this is one reason why I don't think Amazon is for everybody, but there's a great quote by Littlefinger in Game of Thrones: chaos is a ladder. Okay. You don't just have to prep for disaster, but you do need to build a business that's a bit anti-fragile. And that could actually benefit from the changes, from the instability, if you will, of Amazon. If you can't beat the volatility, become the volatility. Or as Bruce Lee would say, be water. The sellers who are really good at this game, have been around for a long time, they're not necessarily the ones who are the best at spreadsheets. They're the ones who seem to be able to adapt much faster. And they're not necessarily surprised by changes that come down the road because they know it's inevitable.
Man, like just loaded with quotes in there. You even got all the way to Littlefinger. Number one, so W. Ross Ashby, right? Like,
yes,
anybody with, like, if your first name is a letter, it's like a requirement to be a badass at something, right?
I would imagine he had a monocle. Yes.
Yeah. Like, you just can't, like, if your first name is a letter, I don't know. You're just not, you're really, really good at something. So, all right. So he said the complexity of your system must match the complexity of the environment. And that's great stuff about adapting. So this is essentially like the literary stating of don't bring a knife to a gunfight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if there are any old school hip hop fans out there, Das Effects stated it as chickadee check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yes.
Right. So it's, you see, there's so many quotes, and R.I.P. Val Kilmer, that great, tell me Thomas Hayden Church shouldn't have taken Mr. Ashby's advice when he threatened Doc Holliday in Tombstone, and he literally pulls out the knife, and that's like that great scene where I think he says something about you're seeing double, and Doc Holliday pulls out the second gun and goes, I'll just put a bullet in both of you or something like so. But R.I.P. Val Kilmer. Yeah, so but that's an interesting concept. Like how do you prepare yourself for a change that you don't know is going to happen? How do you how do you remain flexible? That's something worth spending some time on, I mean, because it's certainly, what are the things that come to mind? Number one, attitude, you see all these people just, just falling apart on social media. And we just talked about it at the top of the show. The arbitrage is dead, and like, oh, I'm packing it in, and all those whiners on in these Facebook groups and stuff. It was great years ago, but you just can't, it's like, all right, thanks for your contribution. So it comes with flexibility. We've talked about it numerous times about how a CEO is primarily, their primary function is problem solver. Like that's what running a business is. I really took to it's not just my love of Glenn Ross, but I bastardized a saying from that movie and on all of my marketing materials for my leads company, and everything I send out says always be sourcing. And tell me, as you go through the laundry list of all of the crises that we've had to overcome over whatever time period you want to look back to, and tell me which one. I mean, not all of them. I'm not saying 100%. So take it easy. But how many of those would have been solved by constantly exploring new inventory? How much of it would have been avoided by maybe venturing out from your 2 to 3 weekly RA trips to the Nike outlet? Like, what if you went to Under Armour and got that ungated? What if you went into Famous Footwear, whatever else is in that outlet? But you know what I mean? Like, if we would have just kept, the curiosity and those exploration skills that we acquired in the beginning, because we needed to get our reps in and find this stuff. If we had kept that, a little bit of that hunger that we had as a new seller, and had a wider portfolio, like, throw it back to wide, not deep, like, how good is that strategy when so many of these crises come in? So it's, I promise we don't say this stuff over and over again because we like the sound of our voices. Like, it comes back to just sound business practices, and just, it helps you remain flexible,
Yeah. He's joking.
There's Lex. Thanks, Lex.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Here's what I think one of the best things that Amazon sellers could do that would make them better at business is go read some biographies or listen, whatever it is. But I'll tell you what. Lionel Hess. So Hess toy trucks, right? Were you around when Hess had gas stations, or were there Hess gas stations when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Okay, so that
when my mom
or
when my grandma, in Jersey, like heavy on the East Coast, right?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, Lionel Hess, his biography is called like The Last of the Oil Barons or something like that. Fascinating guy. Fascinating the way he got started, and how there is a kind of it's a very Zamuri-esque type of story where he found something that the people in his industry didn't want to use and found a use for it and made a ton of money off of that. But a little bit later in his career, he too had a problem he had to react to that he did not see coming. And it was actually, what's interesting is it actually ties in today a little bit. It was tariffs. So there was a tariff set on oil products coming in from other countries, and he was getting some oil from, like, say, I don't know, some of the islands in the Caribbean. I don't exactly remember, but he was getting these oil products and he was shipping them into the U.S. and he was going to have to pay the tariffs on these products. And so instead of complaining, he decided that he would go in and he would read all of the rules. Okay. And he read everything. And he found a loophole. The loophole was that oil products would not be tariffed if they were brought in on a barge rather than a regular oil tanker. And so he took his oil tankers and I don't know exactly what the difference between a tanker and a barge is, but back then it had something to do with the way that the engine worked or something. So he literally cut the engines in half, bolted them on in the right places. They were still oil tankers, but they fit the definition of a barge, and he kept shipping into the United States on what was essentially a tanker barge, and he got over the tariffs and was able to not pay them. So if we as sellers were willing to dive deep into Amazon terms of service, I would imagine that there are some things that we'd be able to find there that would be helpful to our business, much like Lionel Hess reading U.S. tax and tariff code back in the day. And I'll tell you what, if you just want to have more fortitude, you want to become a better business person, you want to realize that some of our problems aren't really that big, man, go listen to Founders Podcast. It has got it. I love My First Million. I love How to Take Over the World. And How to Take Over the World is one of my favorites because Ben is just an incredible storyteller. But the volume at which David Senra takes in, synthesizes these biographies, and then kind of weaves this web between these founders is amazing.
Yeah, and even the Hess story, even just reading about somebody overcoming that, it's not even, you don't even have to take it to, terms of service on Amazon if you don't want to, but simply put yourself in his shoes, like compare that story to the person on Twitter crying about, well, Adidas is 30% of my entire catalog. What am I going to do? Like this guy's chopping up, ship engines, and repositioning them, like I think he had bigger problems than even he solved it, so it's inspiration,
absolutely
above and beyond.
I'll tell you what, I know this may bore some people, like, oh, what do you do for fun? I listen to biographical podcasts, and I'm a hit at dinner parties. But here's something practical that you can do. Okay. Go out, get yourself a PDF version of a biography of someone that you look up to. Maybe it's Lionel Hess, maybe it's Elon Musk, maybe it's Jeff Bezos, whoever it is. Get as much information as you possibly can. Put it all into a single PDF document and upload it into a project in ChatGPT or upload it into Perplexity or Grok. I don't care, whatever your favorite AI is. And then start asking it questions and say, hey, based on, this particular person from this biography that I've uploaded or this set of documents I've uploaded, I'm having X problem in my business. Can you tell me, based on whatever person it is, how would Lionel Hess solve this problem? And I think you'll be interested what you'll find, letting dead people be our business coaches.
Yeah. And tell me how much of an upgrade that is. I mean, if, over trusting the words from some kid in a rented Lambo with 3,000 followers, you're willing to follow him and give him money, like how much of an upgrade would it be to have this great business person distilled through AI answer your questions for you instead. So
exactly,
I'll take that all day long.
All right, let's answer some questions, guys. And of course, if you've got some, drop them in the chat. It's been a little slow, but let's see what we've got here. Avery, have you dug into the low inventory level fees again? I was re-listening to your episode with Jeff Storch from last year, and he had a rant about those fees. Truthfully, I need to dig into them myself. but they seem rather nonsensical for arbitrage sellers at first thought. So that episode with Jeff was before we really, actually, it was before Amazon changed their tune on low level inventory fees. So the thing is now is that you have to sell at least 20 units a week or something like that before you'll even be charged a low level inventory fee. So to be frank, for most arbitrage sellers who are taking a portfolio approach, maybe you're buying 10 or 20 units at a time, it's not even an issue at all. I need to check and see if I'm not sure if I've even paid a single low level inventory fee or not. I'll need to check. So, but yeah, they're really a non-starter. That's for wholesalers. That's for private label folks. It's not really something arbitrage sellers, for the most part, have to worry about. Has there been an instance where you were unable to get ungated for a brand and left with inventory? No, but I'll tell you why. Okay. I have not tried in earnest to get ungated in a brand in years. So, like, right now, I'm gated in Nike. I'm not sure if I really even want to get ungated in Nike. It's never been a needle mover for me. But are there some brands that maybe I will get ungated in? Possibly. But I think I'll be able to without too many issues. But it'll be brands that, like, I'm willing to take a chance on, for $600 or $700 to get ungated. What I have noticed lately is the number of ungatings for me personally have been insane. Matter of fact, I have this to-do list that I keep next to me every single day. And one of the little boxes on the to-do list, I specifically make a tick mark every time I get auto ungated. And last week, I think that it was somewhere around 16 brands that were auto ungated. 2 of those brands being brands that have the dollar sign in front of them. And I think I mentioned this on Wednesday. Let's just say that out of those brands that get auto ungated, that I only get to keep 50% of them. As long as I continue to request ungating over and over again, every time I come across one of those, there's bound to be enough that stick that I'm not really necessarily worried about those brands that I have become gated in. Because I just had to pull back inventory for 3 brands that I was gated in. These 3 brands are not ones that I think I'm going to take the flyer on getting these brands. I just don't think it's going to be, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on these ones. But
yeah, I got an email from one of my subscribers, and we were talking about, I basically had to describe the new seller sandbox, and it's weird, and we were talking about, he was asking whether he should, get these brands ungated. And I kind of, like, I was always, I default to, like, preservation of capital, as much as possible. And, one of the points that I made to him was that, here's the thing, you don't know what would have been ungated anyway once you got out of the sandbox. So you took capital, which is typically, for vast majority of sellers, very precious, and you had that capital tied up in an ungating process that might have only bought you a few weeks, a couple months, if you're not turning a lot of inventory over. That's not a good return on your capital, so I think, ungating, and I just had the realization, a few shows ago, that just how little I ungate as well. You know, it's just not something that occurs to me. I don't, and maybe I just see more brands come across my computer screens than the average seller. I don't know.
It could be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just constantly looking at stuff. So maybe that's abnormal. But David, to answer your question, my answer is yes. I can see him right over there. I've got a bunch of C3PO keychains or something that I tried to do the triple ungate. Tried to do Lego, Disney, and Star Wars all in one shot, and I think I got one of them. I think I got Disney ungated with it, but I could never get the other two. So, and then I think it was like one of the ones. Entertainment Earth is what I use, right? Is that what they're called? Entertainment Earth?
Yep. Entertainment Earth.
I found a product that actually wasn't
on the wholesale side.
Yeah, EE distribution. Yeah. So I found, and it was probably the cheapest one because the Amazon listing ended up like really, really tanking. Like buy box was like $3-4 tank, you know, where it's like, I'm not gonna do this, and so yeah, so I sat on it, but yeah, my word of caution that I'll say the same thing, that I told the subscriber that had a question about ungating is as infrequently as we do it, make sure you're not trying to ungate out of sourcing frustration. Okay. It's the same reason, like just because if you're having trouble finding stuff to sell, that's simply a rite of passage for new sellers. And it's silly. It's a bit silly to throw valuable capital, just kind of out of frustration. I mean, I'm not saying, like I was a new seller and I ungated grocery, and then COVID hit and I ended up quitting my day job. So there's there's the pro side of getting ungated as a new seller. That my timing was very good, luckily. But as far as like just like day in, day out, or you see something like, you get so sick of seeing the red, approval request and getting denied. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's a reason to ungate. I think there's a bit more value in if you took the time that you sat there and considered ungating. If you kind of reviewed like 20 other products instead, it's probably a better return on your time and money.
I would agree. Avery over on Facebook, if you're watching there, shared the link to Amazon's meltable file you can download. I dropped it there if you want to put this on pause and type in that URL. But that's going to be a big Excel file.
But I tell you what, if you do choose to download it, save it somewhere that you'll remember to get it, and come around, around September sometime, pull that out in digestible sections and run it through tactical arbitrage, and getting a jump start on meltable season on the back end when we're allowed to send it in again. That's a nice chunk of change if you embrace that.
Absolutely. David, I see people talk about how there's a difference between being able to list a brand and being able to sell the brand. Thus meaning not all brands on Amazon allow you to sell them there. Thoughts? If you are allowed to list it via Amazon, technically you can sell it. However, brands do have at their disposal things like IP complaints, usually going to be a counterfeit without a test buy. They can send you scary letters via email or buyer-seller messages. They might send you letters to your home. That's where I've actually, over the past couple of weeks, I've gotten a few of those. I usually open them for a chuckle as I walk to the trash can. And there are times when you might even get a Voorhees letter from an attorney, which makes it a little bit more scary, and things like that. So my guess is people are talking about you're not able to sell that brand because the brand harasses you. Well, you can still sell the brand. It's just how much harassment are you willing to take? What's your risk profile look like? You know, do you have an attorney who will shoot off a letter to someone and say, "Hey, back off. You know, we've got SCOTUS or the Supreme Court on our side with the first sale doctrine." Um, you know, so ah, hey Miguel, glad to see you in here. Great podcast yesterday. Thank you. I haven't shared that one on social media yet, but I did enjoy doing that podcast with Chris. It's 17 things that we've learned doing 78 or so episodes of the podcast. It's a good one. You should check it out. Oh, David, no worry, man. That's what we come here on Sundays for. But it looks like had a negative experience with getting instantly denied across 4 applications. Yeah, that happens sometimes. So, and David, it sounds like you might be a little bit of a newer seller. It ungating seems to be going back to a more difficult position. And we've been here before. If you've been around the Amazon block a couple of times. Like there was a time when it seemed like the average number of applications submitted was 25, 35, somewhere in there. Now it seems to be more difficult to get ungated because it seems like Amazon wants more information. Honestly, I would try putting in, your shipping confirmation, your delivery confirmation, your invoice, your receipt, whatever it is. Like I would try to give them more information to see if that helps. And so I see, I know you were talking to Ringer here, but so I'm going to offer some unsolicited advice here. And it seems like you're getting pretty frustrated. Amazon has this soulless application system that seems to not care. And certainly it is annoying. However, we should not expect Amazon to care about us. Um, and I know that when Amazon calls us a selling partner and things like that, it really sounds like you know, we should all be holding hands with Amazon and singing Kumbaya, but that's just not the way it is. We should not expect them to care about us. We need like we understand that they've got the marketplace and we want to sell on the marketplace, so we've got to kind of dance to their tune. Which, as people who want to own a business and be independent, that seems very antithetical to wanting to be an entrepreneur and do your own thing. But that is the way it is with distribution channels, no matter what business that you're in. If let's say, for example, that I owned a local home service business, and one of the ways that I get customers is, of course, through advertising. Well, I've got to follow the rules of whatever the advertising channel is, be that Google. I've got to follow their rules. If I wanted to take out a local billboard, it's not like I could get all the eyeballs on a local billboard by putting a woman without clothing on the billboard. However, I would be breaking probably several local ordinances. And even though I would make it into the news and the newspaper and go viral on social media, I have to follow the rules of that particular distribution channel. So it sucks, but that is the way it is.
Yeah. And that's such a good point, because we do kind of get swept up and thinking that Amazon has some sort of interest in small business, mostly because they try to hint at it to humanize themselves a little bit and distract us from the fact that they're $1 trillion company, which and Avery has a question that we'll get to in a bit. But in that episode with Paul Rafelson, not only does he say that Amazon loves their arbitrage sellers, and he goes, it's a great episode. If you haven't listened to it, you need to. But at one point in time, he just very frankly says Amazon is going to do what's best for Amazon. Like that is the number one thing, to keep in mind, at least in the back of your mind. So and then, couple that statement with the fact that 3,500 new sellers every single day sign up to the Amazon marketplace.
Yep.
And, you can dissect that and who are the actual sellers, how many of those are, you can kind of dive into the demographics. You don't need to, but, I think the point's made without dissection, that Amazon's going to have automated processes in place, because there's an avalanche of information and requests that need to be sorted through. That may be just as much as the packages that they have to process and fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm gonna border on getting too philosophical and losing every viewer from Ann Arbor here if I'm not careful. But you said Amazon's gonna do what's best for Amazon. And as a fan of capitalism, I don't know that that's a bad thing, because at the core of capitalism, in my opinion, is every person does what is best for them. And there are enough times where what is best for me is also good for someone else. And so then we have commerce. And so I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure it's a bad thing. It actually has been a net positive on society as a whole, for everyone to kind of do what is best for them, be that a single individual, a small business, or a multinational corporation. And now, of course, I mean, I know we could argue the pros and cons of, too much capitalism, et cetera, and so on. Are we post-capitalism? All that stuff. But at the core of it, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. And ultimately, we share sales numbers and we share, changes that Amazon does. And the reason that we do is because the overall health of Amazon as a company, the improvement of its health is good for us ultimately. Like I think a lot of sellers kind of are a little bit like part-time a little crunchy, a little anti-big business, wealth resentment kind of going on. It's like they'll get theirs. But I think some people, if something happens that they seem to think is unfair, then all of a sudden, they could just zip off to somewhere else, and it's, screw Amazon. It's like when really, if you kind of look at it as a long-term relationship, and the health of Amazon is kind of important to us.
Yeah.
So, like one automated, or a series of automated kickbacks is frustrating. It's tough to, and this certainly won't make anybody feel better, regardless of how true it is. But the better verification of supply chains and everything like that, and Amazon doing whatever they need to do to manage getting good sellers in on these brands is ultimately good for the customer, and then that's good for Amazon, and then that's good for us. It's a very, very big picture that is no consolation to the frustrations in the short term.
Yeah, very, very hard to zoom out when it does feel like everything is not going your way, and which I totally understand. My kid is a net positive in my life, but it is hard to zoom out and remember that when he's pissing me off and doing nothing but talking back.
I said my youngest was over at my mom's while we were at the wedding yesterday, and found out she offered, she suggested that grandma have a knuckle sandwich for dinner. So that's like, come on, man. Like, you gotta, you gotta at least, like, don't kill the babysitter. Like, we need to, we need to be able to do things. Can't have my mom just going, no, I'm not watching them again. I'm good.
That's so funny. All right, David, does RevSeller account for the inbound shipping cost of an item? If not, how would you go ahead and calculate this? So, a couple of things. One, in your settings in RevSeller, you can add your average inbound shipping cost, or what you think your shipping cost would be, in the settings in the other fees column. There is no way to know, like, without a shadow of a doubt, what the actual cost will be for a single item in your shipment. There are too many variables. You've got dimensional weight, you've got the distance that it's going to go, all those kinds of things. So most people use between 60 cents and $1 a pound for inbound shipping. You put that in the other fee section, and it'll be not the other fee, the shipping per pound section of the settings, and it will figure it out for you. And it's about as good as you can do. Inbound shipping estimates is like, horseshoes and hand grenades. You just got to get close enough. Oh, Luke, good to know. Luke checked his own low inventory fees a couple weeks ago. 1 SKU, 2 units that got charged the fee. Yeah, absolutely. Lounger, issue with lost inbound inventory, and after invoice submit, we are denying your reimbursement claim for this shipment because we did not receive all of the expected units. Of course, because you lost some. Yeah, this is one of those moments when you want to give someone a knuckle sandwich. Yes, I have seen this before. Unfortunately, the only thing you can do is keep going after them and trying to explain it. I think one of the problems is we know that Amazon is outsourcing a lot of seller support. Now, I know Ron at Amazon Seller Help Twitter handle is US based. I'm pretty sure that there are some folks who also help out with that handle who are not US based, and a lot of seller support is going to be outsourced to other countries. And so, with that being said, you got people who are farthest away from the ivory towers. Historically, with businesses, that tends to mean that things aren't always going to run the right way. You've got sometimes a language issue. I've got this conspiracy theory that Amazon maybe uses agencies over in countries rather than like actually hiring people themselves. And so you may have some training issues that go on there. So you just got to keep hammering them.
Isn't it like a mini sample of that is communicating with VAs? Like, I always get the feeling like I never walk away from a conversation with them thinking, all right, I think they really understood that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, and then especially when the same mistakes end up coming in all over again, it's like, guys, we talked about this, So
it'll be a really great day when AI can accurately translate to different language. Like, I know it's pretty good now, but like when it can pick up all the nuances and things like that, like, man, communication could get so much better. It'll be amazing.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's true. I guess ease of communication and ease of understanding are two different things.
Yes.
Bill, a little shout out to the DOS FX reference. Absolutely.
Nice. That's right. This is the only show I know of that will throw that reference in there.
Absolutely right. All right, David, with annotating invoices, is it okay for me to put the business address at the bottom as long as I include that I added it in the comments? So I am totally down with annotating invoices, things like that. I use a software called Snagit, Snagit. And when you do that, it makes it very obvious that you've made an annotation. I use red lettering. I make sure that it's raised off the page a bit. I use arrows. Like, I make it very, very clear, like if I were writing in my own red marker. I think that is a better thing to do than adding in black text or whatever may look similar to the invoice and then adding it in the comments that you've made an annotation.
So let's take it back to the basic question. Is it better to have an invoice with a manually added address, or the invoice au naturel without, that just doesn't happen to have the business address?
I've had to go both ways on this, so I don't know. So my section 3, for example, I didn't have to add any of that information. Even though with the Walmart receipt that I used, it just had the Walmart logo. It had none of their, it didn't have their corporate address or anything like that. But then on an IP complaint that I had recently, first set of receipts didn't work. So then I was like, oh, well, there's no corporate address. So I went ahead and added that, and then that did work. But is it just anecdotal and they just accepted it because it actually got the eyes of a human and they didn't really care about that? Like, that is one of the frustrating things. We don't really know, because they're not like, hey, we're going to mark up your paper for you to let you know what you did right this time. It's just, you just get yes or no.
Right. Or filing taxes. Like, we know what you should pay, but we're not going to tell you. We're here to see if you get there yourself.
And if you get it wrong, straight to jail.
That's right.
Just kidding. You don't go straight to jail. Don't be so afraid of the IRS.
I think some of it is simply just being creative enough to come up with new variations and new file names as you just constantly resubmit something that you can't get through. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on that the actual change itself that you made on your 7th attempt was what did it. I think it was just the fact that you had to get through 7 times, and that's how long it took for you to get the right person's inbox that is going to get you approved.
Yeah. Avery, so your episode with Paul Rafelson made it seem like the first sale doctrine is more ambiguous than definitive for use as a defense for us. He mentioned OtterBox specifically. Have his comments swayed your actions at all and how you respond to those letters, or are you still full steam ahead on team ignore them? I am 99% full steam ahead on team ignore them. If I'm not mistaken, the OtterBox example, the language they were specifically using is that if you did not buy from OtterBox or an OtterBox approved party, that they would make the warranty null and void. If I'm remembering correctly. Now, if I get a letter that states that, and that's what they're going to use, then you do need to think about your risk tolerance level. Because here's the thing. If I went to, well, number one, how many people actually file warranty claims with manufacturers every single year is something that I'd love to know. But the other thing is when people do file warranty claims with manufacturers, how many manufacturers are saying, we really need to know where you bought this from? Oh, you bought it from Amazon? Oh, okay. Can you send us the receipt? Well, that doesn't have that you bought it from a third-party seller on Amazon on it, because it's Amazon's customer, not the third-party seller's customer. And so I think they would have a difficult time there unless they decided to actually sue Amazon for those records. But if I were to get a letter that stated that particular thing, I might decide not to sell that product anymore in the future, especially if it were something that could cause physical harm to a person. So if it was an ingestible, if it was something, that if it broke, it could cause physical harm, then maybe I'm outside. Maybe I'm a no on those things.
Yeah. Kudos to you, Avery, for catching that. I was surprised nobody brought that up, because it was, when you ask these questions, sometimes we ask these questions and there's an expected response, and you're expecting the person to confirm what you think. You think it's a meatball question. It's like, oh, this is going to be great. And then they don't quite match up with your expectations. And it's like, oh, it's like, I remember that moment. I was like, oh man, like this isn't good. But I didn't necessarily agree with him as far as the implication of how risky that is. Regardless, it is still such a small percentage. There's only so many otter boxes, that are out there and that are, willing to just relentlessly defend, their IP or their terms of service. Right.
Yeah.
However, even if I do agree with Paul, I am certainly not going to argue with a lawyer on a podcast, unscripted. So
yes, you don't debate someone who has a literal degree in debate, essentially. Right.
Right.
Not without doing some homework first. And I would agree that I would also. This is something I told, because I've had a few messages here lately where they've either been told by other people who say that they've been told by an Amazon attorney, and they'll say things like, oh, well, the Amazon attorney said I should only file 3 times and then I need to figure something else out. Well, I don't agree with that. I think that attorney's job is to mitigate risk for their clients as much as they humanly can. Like, that's just their DNA. And so, but if we're in the real world, like, there is always some level of risk. And saying that, the level of risk of a consumer filing a warranty with the manufacturer is surprisingly low. Now, the number of warranty claims filed annually with manufacturers varies significantly across industry and regions. However, one of the highest levels of warranty claims filed is with automotive manufacturers and automotive parts manufacturers. The overall rate of warranty claims filed is about 1.98% relative to sales revenue. So if those numbers are similar across other industries where warranties being filed with manufacturers is under 2%, that gives me a fair amount of risk tolerance, or it gives me a fair amount of confidence in my level of risk tolerance.
So 1.8%. So you take the automotive industry, you take Craftsman tool owners and Luke, and that, I think that makes up, apparently that's the 1.8% that are filing these warranties.
Yeah.
No, but you know what? The thing is, you have to actually look at stuff. The advantage that we have is that we're not using templates, and this isn't just boilerplate speech, that we're just kind of rubber stamping and sending out to another Amazon seller, like Voorhees, the Voorhees Letter Factory. That's a good AI image prompt. Sorry. But like if you get, like, hey, you are selling this hair gel, and the first sale doctrine says that that's going to void the warranty. The fact that the hair gel had a warranty is news to me, right? And then Voorhees is going to send you a letter that says, and as you know, the first sale doctrine does not protect you. And the very first case that they're going to reference is a case of a Shell gas station owner piping in non-Shell gasoline, claiming it was Shell, or no, I'm sorry, he added detergent to it, materially changing the product and voiding everything. That doesn't apply to us. That doesn't apply to hair biology stuff we grabbed off the shelf at Target and put in a box and sent to Amazon. But according to their boilerplate tactics, to Voorhees it does.
Yes.
So.
Chad, I recently purchased a beauty product from a discount grocery store, sent it into Amazon. Also recently got IP alert. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. During the check-in process, I see this brand has the red alert. Would you put in a removal order or try to sell through the 12 units? Personally, I'm probably going to try to sell through the 12 units. 95% or more of IP complaints that come through are going to be counterfeit without a test buy that can be beaten. When IP alert came out, getting an IP complaint often meant immediate suspension when they were kind of a new thing. It is not quite like that anymore. While we don't want to deal with them, they are not necessarily an account ending kind of problem any longer. Chris, I really do appreciate you guys doing these lives. You do this better than anyone else. I watch and like them all. I appreciate that. That is very kind of you. Thank you very much, Ringer. Yeah, and Luke, it really is amazing how many apps have translation built into them now. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. If the world wasn't already small, it got a lot smaller when translation came out and became pretty good.
Yeah, and this like on the spot translation stuff that they're coming out with is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. Although it really kind of makes me irritated how much time I spent on Duolingo to not be able to speak the language. And I just throw in an AirPod now and listen to someone talk and have it go over to English. Do IP complaints fall off after 180 days? I do believe that they will come off of your account, but here's the thing, okay? No matter what happens on your account, whether you beat an IP complaint or you let an IP complaint fall off or whatever it is, and if it doesn't show up in your account health anymore, it's always on your permanent record. So in my opinion, we should always be doing our A+ work and trying to get every case taken care of, every complaint handled, because if down the road one were to get suspended over something, you want to be able to point back to Amazon if it ever gets to that. Hey, I have done the right thing time and time and time again. I'm doing the right thing now. And while that doesn't necessarily help your case, in the moment, it does at least give them a pretty good track record of yours that they can see. And Ringer, with your follow-up about that, do you think Amazon can still, and I think I sort of answered this, but can they see those things? Yeah, there is a permanent record at Amazon. Absolutely. And Ryan, ever thought about doing Tactical Tuesdays again? Yes. Which this actually gives me a good chance. If you are not in the FBA Today Facebook group, I would highly suggest that you do so, because on Monday nights, Chris goes live and does sourcing. And I mean, I've seen him go live for 2 hours, letting people watch him over his shoulder source. And honestly, it is not watched enough. Like, people are absolutely sleeping on free sourcing from someone who never seems to have openings on their lead list, very rarely does, and shows it. I mean, answers all questions, all that stuff. So number one, you need to go join the FBA Today Facebook group so you can just watch Chris source for free on Monday nights. And yes, I am thinking about bringing back some version of Tactical Tuesday, but I will not be doing it until Tactical Arbitrage 2.0 is released.
Ryan's going old school with the Tactical Tuesday.
Right.
Those are great shows.
Chris, did I ever tell you that I used to work at a clock factory?
No.
I did get fired. They told me I was putting in too many extra hours.
Ah, son of a bitch.
Yeah. That one was rough. This week. All right, guys and gals. That's it for this Sunday. I hope you guys close out the work weekend strong. Hope you guys have an absolute kick. I'm sorry, Luke. They cannot all be winners. I hope you guys have an absolute kick-ass week this week, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday. And we'll be revealing the winner of the OA Challenge Business Growth Grant. We are excited for that. See you all on Wednesday.